Perceived stress. If you want to dramatically reduce stress, begin by distinguishing between real, life-threatening situations which truly warrant the help of the stress response, and all the other situations where you are not in any kind of immediate danger. The best way to do this is to ask yourself questions related to how you think about things. Let's explore together what I mean by this. Consider a few situations that are commonly perceived to be stressful. Perhaps it is one's personal finances, or not having enough time to do everything, just too much on your plate. Maybe you experience a lot of stress because of your kids, or your neighbor's kids. It doesn't really matter what we name as our stressor, it's still going to be the same discussion. Let me ask you this really important question. Is it possible to have your current financial situation or your many things to do and not feel any stress about it? It may not seem likely, but is it possible? Are there people in the world, or even in your own community, who have similar financial situations or a similar amount of things on their plate who do not feel stressed out about them? You might think that those people are abnormal, but they aren't. They just look at things differently. They interpret things in a different way. Let's look at some examples of how this happens. Rush hour traffic can be very stressful. It can be especially so if you're late for something important. But is it possible to be in your car on the freeway going 5 miles per hour and even be late for something important and not feel anxious about it? The answer is yes, it is possible. It always depends upon how you think about it. What about road rage? Is it possible to not get angry at all the crazy drivers on the highway? It must be possible because there are plenty of people who don't get upset at the crazy drivers. You may be one of them. What about tests? Consider the student who is taking a really important test. This must be a stressful situation, right? No, it's wrong. The reality of an exam is that it has no power to turn on the stress response. It's merely a piece of paper with words printed on it. There's nothing inherently dangerous about it. The stressfulness of the test comes from how we interpret it and what the test means to us. The truth is, different perceptions mean different stress levels. If I were to consider the test as a university professor, I would interpret an exam as questions to help determine what students were learning. My son, in elementary school, would interpret it as a piece of paper that he could easily transform into a paper airplane. The student who stresses about the test is the one who interprets it as being critical to her future. She believes that a low score may pose a threat to her well-being. In other words, blowing it might be painful. But there are other students who take the very same test and don't stress about it at all. This is not to say that the test is not important. It is. It also is not going to result in physical danger, no matter the results. Here's another example. A basketball player is at the foul line, shooting foul shots. He steps up to the line, puts the ball in his shooting hand, lofts the ball into the air, and it sails through the rim. He scores. When would this situation be stressful? When he is shooting to win the game. If he misses, his team loses. The stress response is activated when he anticipates feeling pain if he misses. We've decided in our culture that losing is painful. When will this same activity not be potentially painful? He will feel no stress when he's in his backyard casually shooting foul shots with his friends. So what's the difference? He's doing exactly the same thing in both situations, at the end of the important game or in his backyard. The only reason one situation is more stressful than the other is because he has interpreted the meaning of one differently than he has the other. During the important game, he's thinking of all the negative consequences that might occur if he misses, Each of those negative consequences equals pain. Because he is thinking about a future pain, his body automatically turns on the stress response. Remember, his hypothalamus and his nervous system don't know where he is. They only follow through on the directions of his interpretations. While shooting in his backyard, he doesn't anticipate any negative consequences for missing the shot. If there's no perception of potentially negative consequences, there is no stress response. In other words, no threat thought, no stress. The way he has interpreted the event determines whether or not it is stressful to him. Picture this. I'm driving in my car, and you're following me in your car. We're driving on a one-lane road that is very narrow and winding, where it would be impossible for you to pass me. Imagine that you are late for a very important work meeting, and you may lose your job if you're late. You're in a definite rush. I, on the other hand, am on a leisurely drive with my wife and kids. We are in no rush. We're simply out for a fun drive. Now imagine that a very large car pulls out in front of me, and behind the wheel is an elderly man. He is in less of a hurry than I am, and by the looks of things, he probably hasn't been in any hurry for years. I slow down so I don't run into him, and you're also forced to slow down even more. As I look in my rearview mirror, I notice that you are clearly upset. I see you screaming, waving your fists, and your face has turned a bright red. If I were to ask you why you are so angry, you would tell me that this man's slow driving has made you feel extremely stressed out. The truth, however, is you're making yourself upset by the way you are interpreting the situation. How do I know this? I know this because I am on the same road as you are, driving at the same speed behind the same older gentleman, and I'm not feeling upset or any stress. Why not? Because I have interpreted the situation differently than you have. I see driving slower as an opportunity to view more scenery during our beautiful drive. You interpret it as a major threat that is potentially painful. Remember this, when you sense the possibility of pain, the stress response turns on automatically. You don't feel stress because of the situation. The meaning you give the situation is what always causes you to feel stress. Always. This is true even with the big bear. Imagine that you are camping in the woods. You see the big bear running toward you. Your immediate reaction would be to want to run with great speed or fight with great power, because you view this bear as an immediate threat to your well-being. However, the bear itself does not set off the stress response. It is the belief that this bear is going to inflict some pain on you or kill you that causes you to feel stress. We know that the bear itself isn't stressing you out because we have all visited a zoo, watched bears from a close distance away, and not felt any need to run or fight. You're the same distance from the bear at the zoo as you are when you're camping. The difference is the bear at the zoo poses no threat to you due to the fence that prevents the bear from doing you any harm. At the zoo, you are certain that you aren't going to feel any pain, and, as a result, the stress response doesn't turn on. The key point is this: no event in life is inherently stressful. There is no event in life that causes stress to everyone who experiences it. It might seem to be universally experienced as stressful, but it isn't. Understanding this is one of the grand keys to managing stress more effectively. It always depends upon how you interpret the event rather than the event itself that causes the activation of the fight or flight response. Every single event that you and I experience in life is stressful only because we have interpreted it to be that way. We've decided that some aspect of the situation will inflict on us some pain, which may be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. Or we might see it as a threat to our sense of well-being and comfort. there are no exceptions. The world is simply not a stressful place. There are many stressful appraisals of false emergencies in a very safe place. That doesn't mean things are not important. They are. However, we don't need to view most situations with the accompanying threat of a potential pain, a false emergency, which activates the stress response. We don't need the threat thought to help us with most things that we want to do. With this understanding, we recognize that we can do everything we normally do, but without the stress. In the next video, we will learn more about how to take the stress out of your thinking.